Sugar makes kids hyperactive. Despite its popularity, this belief does not hold up under scientific scrutiny. Decades of studies have found no measurable change in children's behavior, attention, or learning ability after eating sugar. The brain's activity levels remain the same whether the sweetener is table sugar, high fructose corn syrup, or an artificial substitute. What often fuels the perception of a sugar rush is the context: birthdays, holidays, and other high energy events where sugary snacks are served. The myth took root in the 1970s after Dr. Benjamin Feingold suggested in his book, Why Your Child is Hyperactive, that sugar and certain food additives caused behavioral problems. Although evidence was weak, the idea spread quickly among parents and educators. Interestingly, experiments show that when parents believe their child has eaten sugar, even if it is a placebo, they rate the child as more hyperactive. In truth, the excitement of the situation itself is the more likely cause of any extra energy. Cracking your knuckles causes arthritis. The sound you hear when cracking your knuckles is not grinding or your joints wearing down. It is caused by tiny gas bubbles in the synovial fluid, the lubricating liquid inside your joints, collapsing when you quickly stretch or bend your fingers. This release of gas makes a popping sound, but it does not damage cartilage or bone. Multiple large studies have found no link between knuckle cracking and arthritis, and in some cases, habitual knuckle crackers show even less arthritis than non-crackers. This myth likely began as a way to discourage people from cracking their knuckles. Parents and elders passed down the warning, thinking the sound meant harm. Over time, it became common sense, even though no science backed it up. One of the most famous tests of this myth came from Dr. Donald Unger, who cracked the knuckles on one hand for 60 years while leaving the other alone. He found no difference in arthritis between the hands and won an Ig Nobel Prize for his work. We only use 10% of our brains. Actually, brain scans show activity across the entire brain, even when we are resting or asleep. Every region of the brain has a known function, from controlling movement and senses to processing emotions and memories. The brain makes up only about 2% of our body weight, but consumes around 20% of our total energy, meaning it is constantly active. If 90% of it were unused, evolutionary pressures would have eliminated such a costly organ. This myth may trace back to a 1908 remark by psychologist William James about humans using only a small fraction of their mental and physical potential. Self-help movements in the 1920s twisted this into the 10% claim, later fueled by science fiction stories. A likely reason it stuck is that scientists admit we understand only about 10% of how the brain works, which is very different from only using 10% of it. Cold weather makes you sick. Illness comes from viruses, not from low temperatures themselves. The reason colds and flu seem more common in winter is that people spend more time indoors in close proximity, making it easier for viruses to spread. Cold, dry air also helps viruses survive longer and can dry out the lining of the nose, reducing its ability to trap and filter germs. But simply being outside in the cold does not cause infection. This idea is centuries old, born from the visible pattern of more illness during colder months. Without knowledge of viruses, people naturally assumed the temperature itself was the culprit. Generations passed down warnings to bundle up or avoid going out with wet hair, cementing the link in cultural memory. In experiments, volunteers exposed to cold temperatures and then given rhinoviruses did not get sick more often than those kept warm. Still, cold air can trigger other problems, such as migraines or asthma flare-ups, which may have reinforced the belief that weather directly causes sickness. Breakfast is the most important meal of the day. This phrase did not come from scientific research. It originated as an advertising slogan in the early 1900s, promoted by cereal makers like John Harvey Kellogg to sell more breakfast products. Later, companies such as General Foods amplified it in the 1940s through marketing campaigns, embedding the idea into popular culture. Nutritionally, breakfast is no more important than lunch or dinner. There is no solid evidence that eating breakfast automatically improves health, energy, or weight management for everyone. Some people function well with intermittent fasting or eating their first meal later in the day, while others prefer eating in the morning. The key is meeting your daily nutritional needs, regardless of when meals are consumed. This myth has fueled a multi-billion-dollar breakfast food industry, even though many cereals marketed as healthy contain more sugar per serving than desserts. Shaving hair makes it grow back thicker and darker. This is a misconception that has been repeatedly disproven by scientific studies, some dating back to 1928. Shaving only cuts the dead part of the hair above the skin's surface and does not affect the follicle, the living structure below the skin that controls thickness, color, and growth rate. Because the regrown hair emerges with a blunt tip instead of a fine, tapered end, it can feel coarser and look darker. In reality, it is the same hair, just unweathered by sun exposure or natural wear. Despite the myth's persistence in grooming advice and beauty culture, genetics and hormones, not razors, determine how hair grows. Whether on the face, legs, or scalp, shaving cannot alter its fundamental characteristics. Carrots improve night vision and eyesight. Carrots are rich in beta-carotene, which the body converts into vitamin A, a nutrient essential for healthy vision. However, eating more carrots than your body needs will not sharpen normal eyesight or grant the ability to see in the dark. Vitamin A deficiency can cause night blindness, but in people with sufficient vitamin A, extra intake has no additional benefit for vision. This widespread belief began as deliberate misinformation during World War II. British intelligence credited Royal Air Force pilots' success in nighttime missions to eating carrots, masking the true reason: newly developed radar technology. The story not only misled German forces but also encouraged British citizens to eat carrots, which were plentiful despite wartime rationing. The campaign was so effective that the myth remains decades later. While promoting vegetables is generally positive, relying solely on carrots overlooks other nutrients vital for eye health, such as lutein, zeaxanthin, and omega-3 fatty acids found in leafy greens and fish. You need to drink 8 glasses of water daily. This rule is not backed by strong science and oversimplifies how hydration works. People's fluid needs vary greatly depending on body size, activity level, and climate. Water also comes from food and other beverages. Fruits, vegetables, tea, milk, and even coffee all contribute to daily intake. The body's thirst signals and urine color are far more accurate indicators of hydration than hitting an arbitrary number. The idea traces back to a 1945 Food and Nutrition Board guideline recommending about 2.5 liters of total fluids per day. Crucially, the original statement noted that most of this amount comes from prepared foods, but that part was often ignored. Later, bottled water companies helped push the simplified 8 glasses version into public consciousness. This myth has fueled a multi-billion-dollar bottled water industry and unnecessary anxiety over hydration. In reality, forcing excess water can cause overhydration, which in rare cases leads to dangerous electrolyte imbalances. Swimming after eating causes dangerous cramps and drowning. This claim has no medical basis. While digestion does draw some blood flow to the stomach, the body easily adjusts blood distribution during physical activity. The risk of developing severe stomach cramps while swimming is extremely small, and there are no documented drowning cases caused by eating before swimming. Studies from the 1950s onward have found no link between post-meal swimming and increased drowning risk. The idea originated in the 1911 Boy Scouts of America manual, which warned that swimming before digestion was complete could cause paralyzing cramps. The assumption was that the digestive system and swimming muscles would compete for blood flow, leaving the swimmer incapacitated. This theory overlooked the body's ability to regulate circulation to multiple systems at once. In reality, the main swimming risks come from exhaustion, alcohol, or unsafe water conditions, not from eating beforehand. Reading in dim light ruins your eyesight. While low lighting can make your eyes work harder and lead to temporary strain, fatigue, or headaches, it does not cause permanent vision damage. The human eye is highly adaptable and can function across a wide range of light levels without harming its structures. Any discomfort from dim light resolves once you rest your eyes or return to better lighting. This belief likely formed because people associated the unpleasant sensations from eye strain with lasting harm. Before modern understanding of eye physiology, the logic seemed straightforward. If something feels uncomfortable, it must be causing damage. Over time, parents and teachers repeated the warning as a preventive measure. Although good lighting does make reading easier and reduces strain, there is no evidence that poor lighting causes myopia, blurred vision, or other lasting problems. The main consequence is temporary discomfort, not permanent harm, so enjoying a book in a cozy, low-lit setting is safe, as long as you don't mind a little extra eye fatigue. You lose most body heat through your head. The amount of heat you lose from any body part depends on how much surface area it has and how much blood flows through it. Since the head makes up roughly 10% of your body's surface area, it accounts for about 10% of total heat loss when uncovered, not 40 or 50%. The myth likely grew from specific military studies in the 1950s where participants wore full winter clothing, but no hats, making the head the main uncovered area and, in that setup, the biggest source of heat loss. In reality, any uncovered body part, whether it's the head, hands, or feet, will lose heat in proportion to its size and exposure. Interestingly, extremities like fingers and toes can be more critical to protect in freezing conditions because they receive less blood flow, making them more vulnerable to frostbite than the head. Alcohol kills brain cells permanently. Moderate alcohol consumption does not directly destroy neurons. Chronic alcohol use can cause brain cells to shrink and weaken the connections between them, leading to cognitive and memory problems. However, the brain is highly adaptable. With abstinence, some damage can be reversed as neurons form new connections. This belief likely emerged from observing the severe cognitive decline seen in chronic alcoholism. The dramatic phrase "kills brain cells" became a simple, memorable way to warn against excessive drinking, even if it overstated the mechanism. While the myth's exaggeration sometimes promotes moderation, it can also cause needless worry about occasional drinking or give a false sense of safety to harmful patterns that don't result in immediate cell death. Notably, the adolescent brain is far more vulnerable to alcohol's effects, and heavy drinking at any age can raise the risk of lasting structural changes and dementia. Ulcers are caused by spicy food and stress. In reality, around 80% of ulcers come from infection with Helicobacter pylori bacteria, and most of the rest are caused by regular use of anti-inflammatory drugs like ibuprofen. Spicy foods and stress can irritate an existing ulcer and make symptoms worse, but they are not the root cause. This was proven in the 1980s when Dr. Barry Marshall and Dr. Robin Warren demonstrated that H. pylori was responsible, which earned them the Nobel Prize in 2005. Before this discovery, doctors blamed ulcers on stress and diet, believing these factors increased stomach acid and eroded the stomach lining. Patients were often put on bland diets and antacids that eased discomfort, but did not cure the condition. Dr. Marshall famously drank a beaker of H. pylori to infect himself, developed gastritis, and then cured it with antibiotics. A bold experiment that changed ulcer treatment forever. Surprisingly, some research suggests compounds in chili peppers may even help protect the stomach lining.